Are you there, fam? Oh my! I thought you were frozen. That's how good you are when you want to. Like the whole time, I'm like, fam, you're frozen, and no. Instead, your head is just down, looking the whole time. Fam, we got to get into this because you are just ruining my shit. I am about to release. I've been working on it all last night about my most influential people of the year. And I was going to release this whole thread I was working on, and you always blow up my shit because, you know, like, you just do. You do.
What's wrong with your hair?
What do you mean what's wrong with my hair? I did my hair up nicely for the...
You look like you just woke up. Like, can you try a little bit harder for our guests here? I mean, I'm really like...
You don't like the Kramer look? You don't like the Max Baird look? I said Max Baird this morning on the morning show, but, you know, some people got it, some people did not.
No, you need to, like, do something with that hair. I'm so sorry. It comes off like you're just... You know, see, Russian men here, they dress up. They take care of themselves. It's just completely...
I wore my Nico House shirt, for crying out loud. This is one of my best shirts I got in the closet over there. Guys, do us a favor.
That's your best shirts. I don't want to see the worst. Jesus
Where
Christ.
Pilgrim says I look like Costa, Kramer and pasta. Anyways, listen, let's just dive right into it because our guest needs no introduction. She's just an amazing person. Amazing work. Some of the most underrated work out there, fam. It's so important. We often talk about, you know, this whole shit that's been going on with the Twitter files and how they've been naming some of the big names out there, but it's the smaller names out there that you sometimes don't know about. And I think it's more detrimental to a society to make sure that the smaller voices are heard because they can be silenced. They can go away. Their information go away and nobody would ever know anything. So bring on our next guest, fam.
Well, I don't think she's a small voice by any means. But you know,
I said the smaller voices.
I mean, she's a tall drink of water. Vanessa Beeley is here today as one of our surprise guests. And of course, surprise, two world-renowned journalists on the ground always. What an honor. And the three of us are here on the combo couch. We were on their show together, but we were never here together. So this is like the trifecta of love right here.
I know that like some of our guests, some of our people like Trey Wright are just fucking like so jealous right now that I'm here with Eva, Vanessa, and Fee. What up, y'all?
Yeah.
Well, happy New Year's Eve, ladies. And I know, Vanessa, you're in Syria. Eva's in. Where are you right now, Eva? Why don't you tell the audience where you're at?
I'm in Donetsk.
Okay. Yes, Eva's in Donetsk.
Donetsk People's Republic, Russia.
Yes.
Yeah.
Had to throw that one in there.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, it is.
And well, the reason I wanted to have you ladies on is because, you know, there has been so much that has gone on this year. And you've done some amazing work on the ground. You've done some amazing reporting. And, you know, like I said, I always look up to you because you put your money where your mouth is. You actually go to these places and you report on it. And you really bring out the stories of the people first and foremost, rather than, you know, anything focused on yourself. And I really admire that as, you know, the work ethic there that I think often, you know, there's only a few women out there that are in this field that go on the ground. And that's something that I've seen, even if it's almost like you're discouraged to do that, or it seems as, you know, it's not something that I've seen happen very often. So I want to start off by just touching base with Vanessa. Vanessa, you have been talking, you were on RT talking about the latest religious attacks that were happening in Syria. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, there's actually been a very recent, very good human rights report produced talking about the abuses and the persecution of course, all Syrians, but of the Syrian Christian communities in Idlib. But of course, you know, this isn't something new. This has been ongoing. Both Eva and I have visited areas like Malula and other Christian towns, Sadnaya, Hades, Kelbi, across Syria that have been seriously affected by the threats of ethnic cleansing by the Western-backed terrorist groups that are now effectively, many of them, of course, fighting alongside the Nazi brigades in Ukraine. But in Idlib, which has been under the occupation of predominantly Al Qaeda or whatever rebrand that they've been given through their media marketing complex. And effectively, their churches, Christian communities have been desecrated. People have been kicked out of their homes. Their homes have been seized by Nusra Front. Their agricultural land and farms has been seized by Nusra Front with the help of the Western intelligence agency incubated White Helmet organization, which is already accused of organ trafficking and child abduction and the staging of chemical weapon attacks to criminalize the Syrian government. And so basically this report highlights what life is like for really the Christian communities, the fact that under terrorist rule, they're not allowed to practice their religion, which of course contravenes all manner of human rights conventions, Geneva Conventions, even local Syrian law, which considers the sacred right to practice your religion, whatever your religion is. You know, people maybe don't realize that Syria is an incredibly, and Eva can back me up on this, it's an incredibly diverse society. I mean, for example, if you go to the old city now and you see all the Christmas decorations, you will see actually majority Muslim people coming to celebrate Christmas every year. It just always really makes me smile. Right. And then, of course, on the 7th of January, you have the Orthodox Christian Christmas in Syria also. And Christians equally celebrate all of the Muslim holidays and special occasions and so on here. So, yeah, I mean, what is really interesting is that this report, for the first time, has made public, and, you know, it's an independent human rights group that has done this. And they've highlighted the abuses and literally the persecution and the displacement, the ethnic cleansing of the Christian communities. Why does the West want to displace Christianity from the Middle East? And remembering in Syria also there's the declaration that the Prophet Muhammad made and signed. It's actually kept in a tiny little church in what is known as the Christian Valley, Wadi Nasara, which promises that all Muslims will protect Christianity and Christians throughout Syria and throughout the Middle East, right? Why does the West want to kick them out? Because once they kick, and I think it's a horrendous figure, it's something like 70,000 Syrian Christians have left since 2011. And again, Eva will know that in Aleppo, for example, the areas that were more routinely targeted, and in Damascus, by the terrorist groups with mortars, explosive bullets, sniper bullets, etc., where the Syrian Christian or Syrian Armenian Christian areas, particularly in Aleppo, but also in Damascus. And the reason that they want them gone is that the Christians kind of create a bridge between the Muslim communities here, because of course there's more than one or two Muslim sects in Syria, as there are in Iraq and throughout the Middle East. If all the Christians are displaced, particularly to the West, then of course the US, UK, the EU, cabal, and all of their allies are then able to more easily stir up the sectarian division and destabilize countries through this method.
When you were saying why do they want to do that, I was about to raise my hand and go, "Ooh!" Because if all the Christians are gone, it will make it easier for them to get consent from the American people to bomb the shit out of them.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, while they're purporting to basically want to save the Christians, protect the Christians. No, in reality, what are they doing? They're funding the terrorists that are displacing and massacring the Christians.
On that note, because you talked about the religious persecution, there has been that same type of religious persecution going on in the Donbass, and particularly obviously pushed by Zelensky banning the Russian Orthodox Church. Ava, can you talk a little bit about that and about what you've seen since you've been back in Donetsk in terms of what the narrative that is pushed out there is, Mariupol's destroyed. These cities are destroyed no matter what. Even if you are supportive of Russia, it's they shouldn't have gone in because now look, war. War is destructive. We know that war is destructive no matter what. But this narrative that these cities are completely just destroyed. What about that? Can you talk about that and also the religious persecution?
Yeah, the whole narrative about how war is destructive. Of course it is. But the narrative around the Russian special military operation, most Western media and most reports negate the whole 8 years prior of Ukraine's bombing of the Donbass. And with Mariupol is a prime example. When it was liberated from Ukrainian forces, including Nazis embedded with Ukrainian forces, some reporters talked about the disruption of the ethnic diversity of Mariupol. But that was particularly ironic because when Mariupol was under the rule of Ukrainian forces, including Nazis, that was a disruption of the ethnic diversity. When it was actually restored to stability, then Orthodox Christians in Mariupol could practice as they would. Sorry, the camera's throwing me. I was in Mariupol today, and I went to various sites. I went to areas where there was rebuilding of housing. There was a rebuilding of schools. There was a Christmas tree or a New Year's tree, and this couldn't have taken place were the Ukrainian forces with the Nazis embedded with them in power. And I was speaking about this, and I was saying, this reminds me of Aleppo 2016, when it was liberated from Al-Qaeda and other forces that were occupying Aleppo. And at that time, Vanessa was there actually. At that time, when Aleppo was liberated, Western corporate media was saying, well, Aleppo has fallen. And anybody that had followed events in Aleppo knew that actually, no, Aleppo didn't fall. It was liberated, and finally people could be free in the streets. And it was similar. It was the same actually in Mariupol. Western corporate media has done the same thing. They've used the same tools to erase the people who have been who have been destroyed by forces that the West has backed, whether it's Al-Qaeda and other groups in Syria or Nazis and Ukrainian forces in the Donbass. Mm-hmm. They've used the same tools to erase these people and their suffering, at the same time to whitewash the war crimes of these forces, and then at the same time to laud these forces as somehow as heroes. And it's absolutely disgusting because nothing about them represents anything about the will of the people, whether in Syria or in the Donbass or in Ukraine proper. I mean, people who are speaking about Ukraine and let's stand with Ukraine and all that, they don't actually realize that Ukrainian citizens themselves are persecuted by the Nazis in power, by the Ukrainian government. It's a very sadistic narrative that is pushed by the West, and Ukrainian citizens are suffering. But I'm sorry, feedback to your question. Remind me.
The Russian No, Orthodox, the religious persecution. I mean, you kind of answered
Yeah.
it,
Okay.
but
So I was going to speak about that too. There's a community to the southwest of Donetsk, um, Nikolsky, and it's actually a community that identifies with Ukrainian, as I understand it, identifies with Ukrainian Orthodoxy, but has been persecuted, has been bombarded heavily by Ukraine. So I was there in June. I was there twice in June, and it was being bombarded heavily by Ukrainian forces. And since then, it's been even more heavily hit by Ukrainian forces. And these are people who identify as Ukrainians, but they're
Mhm.
Orthodox Christians that identify as Ukrainians, and Ukraine has been targeting them. And it's a monastery. It's a monastery that was giving safe haven to residents from local communities and to the brothers in the monastery themselves. And the thing is, if the reverse were true, if this was Russia bombing them, we would hear about it 24/7. Just like if we heard if the reverse were true, and if it was Russia bombing, Donetsk 24/7, we would hear about that. But the way Western media operates, of course, is to spin it just like they did in Syria.
Yeah. Eva, the thing is too, as well, is that when they say, "Oh, Aleppo is fallen," that can mean two different things, right? What does it mean? Does it mean it's fallen from a United States perspective, or is it fallen from, a Syrian perspective? We still see people, here in the States, kind of asserting that we have the right to go into these countries and to control them because Assad bad, Maduro bad. I heard somebody the other day literally at an election integrity trial, and they were starting to talk about Latin America, and she said, "We're going to lose a whole continent." I'm like, "What do you mean we're going to lose a whole continent? Why do we have the right to be in there in the first place?" So when they say Aleppo is fallen, they might be saying that we lost control of Aleppo that we never had in the first place. So, I mean, it is confusing because it depends on the way you look at it. And Americans, they have such a distorted view about what's going outside their borders. It's hard to get across to them what is really going on.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was saying before, like Vanessa was actually in Aleppo when it was liberated,
Yeah.
and Western media was saying it had fallen, and it was
Mhm.
just absolutely absurd. Like,
Yeah.
finally,
Mhm.
people could walk in the streets freely without fear of being sniped or whatever by terrorists that the West had funded and supported.
Isn't
I
it?
think I was going to play Fam really quick some of the videos that
Yeah,
she
yeah,
had
go
up
ahead.
there from
Yeah,
from the schools, because I
Mariupol.
think this is,
Mhm.
Mariupol. I think this is something that you guys really do great. That when we see your work, you humanize the people that are there on the grounds, and sometimes we can forget that they are humans when the United States media just kind of plays them off as just being infidels of sorts. So here's children in a restored Mariupol school. I'm going to mute me up and go ahead and play these, and then you have a young man playing a guitar. This is some good stuff, guys. Do us a favor, hit the like button, hit the share button.
Yeah, that was a song to the New Year's, Novum God, or whatever.
I think it was
You know,
beautiful. Go ahead, Fam.
yeah, I just want to say, like, one of the things that I first noticed when coming to Moscow was like, and they try to paint people in Russia like they're just different, like they're just like, that's us, and then the Russians just like are a different type of human, that they don't do normal things,
Orcs.
like go outside with their
Yeah,
family, or like
right.
go to the park, or like celebrate the holidays. It's just like this whole thing. It's weird. I'm laughing because it's like it's so basic and simple. You would think like more people would think, oh yes, of course, like they're human beings too. But really, like,
Yeah.
we have dehumanized the other in the West, whether it's, you know, Russians, whether it's the Chinese, whether it's the communists, whoever it is the villain, whether it was the unvaxxed, right? Because if we're going to talk about this year and the previous years, we got to talk about all the psyops and all the things that we have been told to dehumanize and think are lesser than, for the last few years, that we have endured psyop after psyop after psyop, and it's just, it's crazy. It's nice to see that, because I think people still think, you know, Russia is the 1990s after the Soviet Union. They still have this idea, this picture, that it's that it looks like that it is that, and they don't understand that these are just regular human beings, and
Yeah.
it's so kind of ridiculous that we have to even say that, that it seems like completely dumb that we shouldn't have to go over the basics. I think, but I really do see
Yeah.
that
I
apparently
think
it's
they
necessary.
throw out the door the art, the culture, the beautiness of Russia. I mean, look at the programming in our movies, right? Like, I remember watching Charlie Wilson's War, and one of the opening scene had like two Russians in a helicopter, and they're just firing missiles at the. First of all, it was the Mujahideen they were firing missiles at, but I mean, they're just like having a talk, like, you know, like they have ice in their veins and they just drink vodka on the regular and they don't care, and it's like, you know, this is the Russian person. It's like that villain inside a movie. So when we see these things that you guys bring to the table, I think they are so powerful. They are even more powerful than a lot of the information out there when you can just look back and watch these children sing. I would like to play this one really quick. Would you mind if I do that really quick, Eva?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wow, I wish I could
Beautiful.
play like that.
I know, it's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, when I moved to Russia last year, I spent a couple of weeks in Ismailova in a hotel there, and it was mid-January, and I went walking around the area. There's a beautiful Kremlin there with a amazing flea market. But what I found most interesting was there was just like in the area there was an area where people were sledding, kids were sledding, and it was like, you know, what was happening back in Canada where I'm from. Back then, like last year, I think there were still a lot of COVID restrictions, and that yet in Izmailova in Russia, I was seeing like just normal scenes, you know, kids sledding, parents like filming them as they slid down the hill. I saw that in other areas of Moscow too, and it's just like back to what you're saying, Pasta. You know, people have this conception of what Russia is, and it's just like people do the same thing here in Russia as they do anywhere in the world.
And actually, I mean, connecting it into Aleppo, I remember, I mean, I was literally, I think, like, I'm going to sound very familiar saying this, I think I was the only Western journalist there, because BBC Channel 4, and of course, were not there to record it, because of course it completely destroyed their narrative for the last 5 years, right? So of course they didn't come to actually see people celebrating their liberation. And just remembering at the time, there was a story that was actually released by the UN, and I think Ava will remember this, that the Syrian Arab army were raping women in the streets of Aleppo. Now I'm laughing because I was in the streets of Aleppo. And actually what I was saying, what a lot of people don't understand, is actually the main force that was liberating East Aleppo was Liwa al-Quds, the Palestinian faction. Why? Because this was their area, this was their suburb, largely. So the majority of these soldiers were actually seeing their homes for the first time in 5 years and seeing their families for the first time in 5 years. They didn't even know if they were alive or dead. So actually what I was seeing was young Syrian Arab army soldiers collapsing on the ground and thanking God for the fact that their grandmother, their mother, their wife, their daughter were alive, right? I mean, it was the complete reality inversion that we're now seeing in Ukraine. And then what I also, a memory that I want to bring up when we talk about the dehumanization, particularly now of Russians. When I was in Jabrin, which was the area where all of the recently liberated people were coming to process their papers, because many of them had had their ID cards stolen by the terrorists and so on. And for the government to process them and to give them social security, to give them housing, etc., they needed to be able to identify them. Right. And a lot of them also had been incarcerated for 5 years with no medical treatment. So a lot of them had skin diseases. A lot of them had been released from the various detention and torture centers in the hospitals. And I'll underline that, in the hospitals, and the schools. And they also hadn't received any treatment. And I remember there were 2 Russian mobile hospitals. And during this time, there were also 2, I think there was a Russian doctor and another Russian humanitarian aid worker that was actually killed by terrorist shelling during this time, not talked about in the West, right? They were not military, they were humanitarian. But I remember going to this mobile hospital that was established by the Russians to receive more than 250 people per day. So there were 3 doctors working inside this little tent, and after about 20 minutes negotiation, they allowed me to come in and film for 5 minutes. And honestly, the tenderness with which the Russian nurses and Russian doctors were treating these people, they couldn't speak the language. Like the Syrians didn't speak Russian and the Russians didn't speak Arabic, but it was another language altogether, of complete humanity. And I saw guys coming in that, I mean, they basically took off his shirt. He had rope burns on his neck. They'd obviously hung him and then cut him down again as part of the torture. He had beating marks all over his chest and his back. And when you watched how the doctors treated him with such gentleness, such consideration, and such compassion, you know, it's completely the opposite to what the West did to these people. The West incarcerated these people, and actually the media increased their incarceration by probably about 2 years by lying about their conditions, right? And protecting the terrorists that were torturing them, executing them, raping them, imprisoning them. And mental health patients in this particular area were used by the terrorists as suicide bombers, because they were vulnerable and they didn't know what they were doing. So they were drugged up and then sent in as suicide bombers because they had no idea what they were doing. You know, that the heinous crimes that were committed through the West and through their proxies in East Aleppo, and the kindness of the Russians to the Syrian people when they were finally liberated, is one of the biggest contrasts of the war in Syria that I've ever seen.
Yeah,
So many people got that wrong.
I could add on to that, just like
Go
in
ahead.
terms of things here in the Donetsk People's Republic. You remember back in I think it was late July, Ukraine bombed a facility that was housing Azov prisoners, and it was like I forget the number. It was over 60, I think, maybe 50, over 50 or 60 were killed, and I saw the site that like they Ukraine bombed during the evening. I saw the next morning, and it was a horrendous sight. I mean, these were Azov Nazis, but nonetheless, it was a horrendous sight. And after going to the prison facility or detention facility, I was with other journalists, and we went to a hospital in Donetsk that was treating those who had been injured but survived. And the doctor said something like, I'm paraphrasing, but like, you know, we will treat everybody, whether they're Ukrainian or Russian. So, you know, Vanessa, what you're talking about reminded me of that. And then just, 2-3 days ago, after I arrived here, I interviewed, I haven't published it, I haven't had time to publish it, but I interviewed Donbass soldiers who were in Ukrainian detention, some of them for up to 9 or 10 months. And they were tortured. Some of them were injured, initially when they were captured. Some of them were not, but they were tortured. And there was one guy that received a pretty nasty shrapnel wound to his leg, and he didn't receive adequate medical care from Ukrainian forces. And he said, I think it was 2 different occasions, he said, he arrived to some sort of Ukrainian medical facility, and he was told by the doctors there, we shouldn't treat you because you're the reason we don't have electricity. And I just remember thinking, that's night and day to how the Donbass doctors were treating actual Azov Nazis. They were saying, we will treat everybody, whoever they are. And so, what you're saying, Vanessa, just reminded me of that, the vilification of everything to do with Russia and Syria. And then in reality, it is they who are behaving more humanely than the people that the West are lauding as heroes.
I just wanted to point this out. Isn't it crazy? Because I've experienced this before, where you're reporting something, for example, that Aleppo was liberated, instead of what the Western media is reporting. Reuters had, Russia has sent 100 missiles to Ukrainian civilians the other day. That was their title. And meanwhile, you're over there reporting, Eva, about how Ukraine has shelled civilians and several people were killed. So it's a little bit, I don't know, maybe you guys can speak to this. We were in Nicaragua.
I was going to say Nicaragua.
The New York Times was saying, oh, the elections are so unfair. They're closing down polling centers. They're, they're pushing journalists away. And we're sitting there and we're all like, wait a minute. What? No, the polling centers are open, everything. It's weird because you're they lie, but it's a whole other thing to be doing some reporting and be on the ground and then have these idiots lie from whatever desk they're sitting on in DC or wherever they are, definitely not on the ground. And it kind of does something to your brain where you're like, wow, what are we
did I just say that?
Yeah.
The media is the government, and the government runs the media, right? You can easily say that. Go ahead, Vanessa.
Well, the intelligence agencies run the media. The government is too stupid to do anything.
True.
Or just repeat its lines, I mean, it is quite a weird, and again, I know Eva said this as well. I mean, I remember there was one report that Lise Doucette did for the BBC, and in the report, one would assume that she was on the ground in Syria. In fact, that report was made from Beirut, and this is the extraordinary thing. Most people don't actually realize there were a couple of Channel 4 reports that were very suspect, I think from Kiev, or Kiev, as we should now say it. And honestly, it could easily have been green screen stuff. What's her name? Lindsay Helsam, who I can't stand that woman. I can't stand most mainstream journalists, let's face it, but it's particularly unpleasant, as is Lise Doucette, in my opinion. And she was reporting from Kiev, and honestly, she could have been anywhere, and I remember they were showing the footage. I don't know if you remember really early on, when civilians were trying to leave Mariupol for safety, and they were actually being shot by the Ukrainian forces and by the Azov battalion and the various crime syndicate thugs, right? And I remember them showing the footage of the cars and saying, and Russia bombed these cars and Russia killed these. I'm like, on what planet are you even reporting from right now? Because this has been in the news for the last 2 weeks that they're being killed. There's footage all over social media and Twitter and Telegram showing the Ukrainian forces killing people that were trying to leave Mariupol at this time. the news now is so distorted. Anyway, it's all produced by Reuters, AP, and AFP, right? That's basically the top of the pyramid, and then all of them take their information from there, and it's copy paste. That's effectively what it is. They don't need to be on the ground.
Literally, the Review Journal in Las Vegas. I'm sorry, fam. Really quickly, I just want to say there. And I always make the joke. I'm a newspaper guy. I get it and stuff. And I like to read it because I want to know what the empire is planning. It's like looking at their playbook. What are they? What kind of freaking propaganda are they going to put out there? What are they going to push? It gives you a good jumping point. Like, all right, this is what the empire is trying to get out there. This is the narrative. But literally, it is copy and paste in that front section. AP. Every once in a while, you're like, "Ooh, look! They have a journalist in the building. Somebody from the RJ actually wrote something." And then it stinks anyways. And then it's AP. Go ahead, fam.
Yeah. So you mentioned Lise to say thank you. So Lise is a Canadian working for the BBC. And in 2014, she actually was in Syria. So you're right, Vanessa. In most cases, these corporate Western corporate journalists aren't even anywhere near the scene. But in 2014, she actually was in Syria. And terrorists in eastern Ghouta bombed old Damascus, as they were doing all the time. And they killed one child. They bombed an elementary school in old Damascus, and they killed one child and injured over 60. And I was on a peace delegation. It was my first time to Syria. I was on a peace delegation. This was like April 2014. And some of us went to the French hospital to see the children that were being treated and to document, who they were. And Lise Doucet was there. And so there was an altercation between somebody who was asking her, like, are you going to tell the truth about what's happening? She's kind of like nodding her head. She went on to write an article titled something like Russian Roulette. And then she had the audacity, because again, it is audacity for anybody who spent even minimal time in Syria during that period. You would know that the shells are coming from eastern Ghouta. There's no disputing it. And she had the audacity to say, like, yeah, well, locals think it's coming from the regime, the government, which is just complete intellectual dishonesty. Everybody knew where they were coming from. So that's one thing, so that's like you have corporate media on place, like in the place, and they're still reporting dishonesties, because they wouldn't, otherwise they would say, oh, we can't report because we don't know what's happening, but they're there. And then I had this year, I had the experience in March this year. I went my first time back to the Donbass. I had first gone in September 2019. In March, my first time back to the Donbass, I went with the Ministry of Defense delegation, a whirlwind 2-day delegation. But we saw a lot, we heard a lot. And then I wrote an article about this later. 2 French mainstream channels who saw exactly what I and others saw and heard. They basically they obfuscated everything we'd heard. And they just painted this picture of like, oh, well, this is like a Russian propaganda tour. Even though we'd been to the site of a mid-March Tuchka-U missile attack that killed 21 civilians. And that was like, where am I? That was like 2 streets from where I am. So central Donetsk, and they didn't talk about that. They didn't talk about the 8 years of Ukraine's bombing of Donetsk. Any of the stuff we heard, they didn't. In fact, what they did was they cherry-picked footage from a chief physician in Volnovakha, a city between Donetsk and Mariupol, who spoke about, he wasn't the best, media personality, but he did very clearly say that Ukrainian forces had occupied his hospital and had mined the intensive care unit. And they cherry-picked a few seconds of his talk to paint him as this bumbling fool. And Vanessa, you remember Dr. Nabil Antaki? I remember I think it was in 2016 on one of my Aleppo visits. And I spoke with him, and he told me how, I believe it was Canadian Broadcasting Corporation CBC, did the same thing to him. They interviewed him at length, I think by Skype for like an hour or something. And then, they warmed him up. And then near the end of the interview, they asked him some question like, so, what do you miss about your former life? And he's like, oh, I miss playing golf or something like that. And that's basically all they took. They didn't take He's a doctor, and he was a very active. He is, or he was, and is a very active doctor, supporting civilians that were being oppressed and bombed by terrorists. And that's all they took. They didn't take anything else he had to say, which was extensive. Like, he spoke about the sanctions, he spoke about the terrorists. And all they took from him was like, oh, I miss playing golf, or whatever it was he said, swimming, whatever. And this is how they operate. Then they claim, oh, we can't access these areas. But when they do access the areas, they just cherry pick.
And I remember actually meeting Lise Doucet, however you pronounce it, in Damascus. I think it was 2017, and I bumped into her in the media ministry. And of course, she was utterly charming for the first 5 or 10 minutes. And then I basically said to her, so why is the BBC not investigating the white helmets? Why have you just not reported on them at all? And her answer was really extraordinary. She basically said, because it's too polarizing and too controversial. And I looked at her, I said, but you are a media. You're media. You're not political. That's a political answer.
Yeah.
So this is what they are. They're political animals. They do effectively what they're told, and their handlers are the intelligence and security agencies. That's it. The deep state. They're an extension of intelligence agencies.
I want to play this clip from Eva that she has too as well that Fee put up. Let's take a look at this really quickly too as well, because I think I don't think a mainstream media outlet journalist would be able to play this if they had a chance to. Let's take a look.
It's too polarizing.
This is actually the very same street and site where Ukrainian shelling in September, in a space of 5 days, killed 26 people. And this was one of the sites that was shelled. Now, in September, the shelling was more in the middle of the street, and there was a small bus that burned up, and there were 2 dead bodies inside. You can see there's a church in the background. I was just walking from that direction. And then you have all these shops. This is actually the start of a marketplace. This looks like it was a flower shop. Just shops. No military target. So I don't know when this happened. I'll try to find out when this was. The September shelling that killed 6 people here. There's the bus in the center of the road. There's a man dead on the seat of the bus. Ukraine has bombed just within 15, 20 minutes. That is the terror that they're living with on a daily basis, folks. This is Ukrainian terrorism. There are no military targets here. And then there was bodies a little bit further up past those cars, and bodies in the road. Like I said, this is the start of a marketplace. And yet these resilient people reopen, even though at any time Ukraine can shell here again.
Yeah, so that shelling, I was asking a friend, because I was here in late November, and I was staying actually quite close to that market area. And that shelling hadn't occurred. So it was sometime after. I think it probably was in mid-December. In December, Ukraine was shelling the hell out of the city. There was one morning, it was like 7 a.m., and there was 40 grads launched almost simultaneously at the center of the city. So I'm not sure exactly what day that damage occurred, but probably mid-December.
Yeah. And, what?
I was going to say, how they play that off. Russian asset Eva Bartlett is showing, twisting the narrative. and showing what the Russians have done to the Ukrainians,
Yeah,
they would
well,
just
that's what
twist
I
it
was
the
just
other
gonna
way.
say. That's what I was just gonna say though, because you only hear Russians are attacking civilians, and actually when I go on what is it, like fascist book, like left book, I don't even know what to call it, Facebook, I get so irritated because
Yeah.
I'll post something about like lights we saw, and somebody will be like, nobody hates Russians, but they really went in there illegally, and then they'll start saying,
Yeah.
they blasted civilians, and I'm like, I just go and attack, but then I just leave because I can't get sucked into that. But like, it's just so enraging when I see these literally direct source your videos on the ground where they're shelling markets, where they're shelling
I had
areas that have no weapons there, zero.
there was some New York numbskull that decided that because of the way people were dressed, my report on that particular incident was incorrect. Like because people were overdressed, just like yeah, they shouldn't be wearing that kind of clothing at this time of year.
It was a staged thing, is what he was saying. Did he really?
That's what he was saying. Yeah,
Oh,
I mean,
jeez.
in that clip that you played, I appeared. Now I don't normally show myself. My kind of like reporting, I don't normally do the selfie journalism. It's just not my style. But on that particular day, I was so effing pissed off.
You should say fucking. Yeah.
Yeah, because I had seen, as I said earlier, or as I said in the clip, this was in the space of 5 days. 26 civilians were killed, and like 2 or 3 days prior, I had seen the mangled mess of bodies in another district of central Donetsk. It was a horrifying scene. And then I go on Twitter and I see people saying shit like, oh, well, that's fake blood, or, all the stuff like that we can actually attribute to how Al Qaeda in Syria operated, the White Helmets in Syria operated, or like the fake Ukrainian propaganda. But, I actually, I saw these bodies, and the stench, if you've been near a dead body or multiple dead bodies, the stench is overwhelming. So that was in my mind. And then I was at this site, the clip you just played, and I was just like, okay, fine, I'm going to film myself. I don't like to do that normally, but like I'm really pissed off.
Yeah.
And where was I going with that? Yeah, just you have these trolls. I mean, obviously, the trolling is designed to rattle you and to derail you. But they'll say this kind of stuff like this is fake blood, or their hand was moving, or stuff like that. And it's
Yeah.
So many people have been killed here, and the trolling is to support the Western narrative, of course, that Ukraine is this pariah state, and that Russia. Oh, that's what I was going to say. What you're saying, Fee, is like, the trolling was always like, well, this wouldn't have happened. These people wouldn't have been slaughtered, if Russia hadn't blah 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 in February 2022. Like, but actually, these people were being slaughtered. I'm sorry for laughing. I wasn't laughing. These people were being slaughtered.
Yeah.
2014 in heinous ways. And in fact, Vanessa and I always shout out George Eliason, an American journalist living in Lugansk, who's been doing amazing reporting and journalism for years and years. And among the things he's covered is the fact that Ukrainian forces have dug and mass graves. The very things that were that Russia was accused of. That I've gone to various sites since April, and in November I went back to a couple of sites. Western media said that Russia has made these mass graves, pits 30 meters wide, according to the former mayor of Mariupol, who fled right when the Russian military operation began, and who was nowhere near Mariupol. But as George Eliason has documented, the Ukrainian forces actually did this, or Ukrainian forces and Nazis. And he there's a video. He's in an RT documentary where he's standing in one of these mass graves, saying like, within minutes, I saw the bodies of civilians, hands bound, decapitated. So all these things that Western media are claiming that Russia did, Ukraine actually did. And then when Western media negates Ukraine's crimes, yeah, it's just, well, we've seen it, Vanessa. We've seen it over and over again in Syria.
I
It's a replay of how things played out in Syria.
I just
Yeah,
want to
I
say
think-
that.
sorry.
Go ahead, Eve. Eva. I just want to say that Vanessa. I just want to say, Eva. I think that's really something hard to even see. That person's body, like in that like bus, was just like, holy cow! Can you imagine? I mean, we go to a favela and I see poor people and I start to lose it. I have to go off to the side. So this work alone is just incredible. And thank you so much for documenting it, because it's important that people see that, because that's what they go through on an everyday basis.
Yeah.
And they've been doing that since 2014. I'm sorry, Vanessa, for interrupting.
Uh, no, I know what I was going to say. I always make the point that the kind of the reason for creating the white helmets, according to the propaganda in the West, is that the white helmets are there to document war crimes. But, I always say to people, do you ask yourselves ever why the white helmets that are embedded with ISIS and Nusra Front and Al-Sham and Jabhat Shamia and all of these groups that have committed on a daily basis atrocities against the Syrian people, and yet the white helmets have never documented a single crime by these groups? The only documentation that has been done is against Syria and Russia. And you can extrapolate that out to the UN agencies, to the UN cutouts, to Human Rights Watch, to Amnesty International, to the governments, etc. And you'll see exactly the same pattern. If they were to come out and be genuinely balanced and actually say, well, okay, but the Ukrainian forces have committed atrocities against the people of Donbass for the last 8 years, etc., but Russia has done, then they might have a bit more credibility. But when it's like literally, no, everything's Assad, or everything is Putin, or everything is Iran, or everything, then surely people need to start thinking, no, that can't be right. Because in a war, things happen, shit happens, and war crimes are committed. No one can say. I mean, it's like when people say, well, Assad's a war criminal. Really? When did he stand trial? When was he prosecuted? Sorry, did I miss something? Allegedly you have these mountains of evidence in a vault underground somewhere in the UK. Well, where is it?
Yeah.
Where the hell is it? I don't even believe it exists anymore, to be quite honest, because it's all smoke and mirrors, and they fabricated everything to maintain the war and the sanctions and the pressure and the blockade against Syria. And they're fabricating everything now to demonize Russia and to normalize Nazis. I mean, I keep saying this. Why do I have to keep arguing Nazis are bad? Or why do I have to keep arguing that Al-Qaeda is shitty?
Yeah.
Like, what is this? If Al-Qaeda attacks Paris, Bataclan, suddenly they're terrorists. But if they massacre 100 Syrian civilians, they're like, oh, it's rebels.
One Nazi flag at a trucker rally, one is too many. But a few Nazis in in the Ukraine, it's just a few.
They give them medals.
Yeah, I know, right?
Vanessa, just to tag on to like the issue of the white helmets and their theatrics. And I know we've talked about this, but just for the sake of this conversation, everything that they have done for their theatrical productions, they've essentially lifted from actual heroic Palestinian medics and Syrian medics. And you can speak at length about the real Syrian civil defense. And like in my years in Gaza, I spent a lot of time with Palestinian medics, and they would never have done the theatrics of the white helmets. They would never have stood there and like screamed in front of the cameras. They wouldn't have had multiple camera angles. They were like, they went there, they got the person that needed medical care, and they got the hell out of there in their bare bones ambulance. And they never stood around screaming, these slogans. It's just like, all the narratives that the white helmets have hijacked, or the Western corporate propagandists with the white helmets as their front group have hijacked, actually exist in Palestine and Syria. And they are narratives that these Palestinians and Syrians are suffering at the hands of the Western imperialists and their lackeys that are perpetrating them. It's so disgusting. It's like you're saying earlier, Vanessa, I think, an inversion of reality. It's always an inversion of reality.
Yeah, like Erdogan being nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize.
Yes.
I did not know that.
Yeah, in the
Erdogan. Okay. Fam, I think we should get onto the Elon Musk part. Do you want to ask something else? Because I have that.
Well, no. I mean, it's been a while, and I know it's late for us old ladies here. Babushkas.
Don't anybody get fooled. These are not old ladies right here. These ladies will. In
babushka, it's endearing. It's endearing. I'm saying it. I'm calling myself a babushka.
You three ladies would drink me under the table. I'd be out.
Well,
first between all you all. I just
not going to deny that. But I just wanted to ask you this question. I think it's going to get you riled up, because this is a question I think a lot of us have been dealing with. I would consider anti-imperialist. You ladies have really fought against the imperialist narrative, the empire. So if I'm somebody that's like, oh, I hate all empires and I hate all governments, and I say to you, hey, Vanessa, what's going on in Syria is terrible. What the United States did is terrible, but Assad is still bad, and you should be able to condemn Assad. Hey, Eva, I understand that Russia is supposedly denazifying, but really, like, all war is bad. They could have tried something else. Putin could have done something else. I mean, he didn't have to invade. What do you say to those arguments? Whoever wants to jump in first, because I am sick and tired of hearing that. Oh, war is bad. Why are you supporting war? I thought you were anti-imperialist. I'm sorry.
I mean, when Russia began its special military operation in February, we heard that loud and clear from prominent Western anti-imperialist comedians, activists. And the thing is, my first response was like, yeah, that's great. Like, it's great that you're anti-war. But you know what? The people of Donbass are anti-war, and they've been warred upon for 8+ years. Like, they did not ask for this war. They only wanted to be afar from what was happening in Kiev and Odessa, the massacres and the rise of fascism there. And just because they wanted to retain their independence, they were warred upon since 2014 on. And the Minsk Accords meant nothing, as we know now, from Angela Merkel and Poroshenko himself. They never intended to adhere to the Minsk Accords. So you have the one side, the Russia pushing for a peaceful negotiation to the conflict between Ukraine and the Donbass. And on the other hand, you have Ukraine never intending to adhere to any sort of peaceful resolution. And then you have the buildup of NATO forces on Russia's borders, and you have the intense increase of Ukraine's shelling of the Donbass prior to Russia commencing its military operation. So all this crap about like, oh, well, Russia should have done this or that, or they could have found a peaceful solution. It was on the table for 8+ years, and it was the West, and it was the West, Ukraine, but the West specifically that negated it. So it really pisses me off, because the people that say this honestly, most of the people that say this have no sense of what it's actually like to be under bombing. And they have no sense of what the people in the Donbass have endured for 8+ years. So it's all great to virtue signal and say, like, I'm anti-war.
Nobody wants war.
It's bullshit.
I mean, that's just a ridiculous premise to base your argument on. Of course, nobody wants war. Nobody in their right mind, apart from Raytheon or Lockheed Martin, want war. I mean, that's just stupid. And then to kind of virtue signal this position as if, well, we all disagree with it. Of course we don't disagree with it, but there's a far more realistic, complex, nuanced argument that should be examined over saying, oh, well, no, all war is bad. Well, war, it depends who's defending and who's attacking. And let's face it, it is the West that for centuries has attacked target nations that have defended themselves, some of them for decades, almost a century, which is Palestine. And I get the same thing when people say to me, but why do they have to like keep protesting so violently? Like, what do you think? Why do they have to turn into suicide bombers? I mean, come on, that is terrorism, right? You know, and I'm just, you have no idea what it is to reach the level of desperation where you're prepared to blow yourself up because your life is
Yes.
so utterly despairing and fruitless and depressing and oppressed, right?
Yeah.
And absolutely persecuted, that the only way out, and the only way out you feel has any value. And I've spoken to people in Gaza, and I'm sure Eva has too, about the period where the suicide bombing was more prevalent. And they said, when people reach this level of desperation, that's what they do. They see it as a way out. They can leave, but they can also do damage before they go. Of course, nobody wants that to be the situation, but you have to. The thing is, everyone keeps addressing the symptoms. Nobody's addressing the causes. And
Yeah.
it's a Western privileged, it just drives me insane. It's a Western privileged, never been out of the US, never been out of the UK, never been out of the EU, never experienced occupation, siege, blockade, sanctions, mortar fire, sniper bullet, seizure of your property, massacre of your children, rape of women en masse. In Homs, for example, in the beginning of the war, and again, Eva knows about this, but I've interviewed women that survived this. And I'm sorry, this is going to shock people, but I really don't care because you've got me on a rant now. But when the terrorists first entered, and I'm talking terrorists as in the Free Syrian Army rebels, when they first entered Homs, you know what they did? They rounded up the women in Homs. They stripped them naked and they made them walk in the streets. One pregnant woman was tied between two cars, and the cars were driven apart until she was split in two. And then they hung the fetuses on the trees. This, guys, is what you're supporting in Syria. And this is exactly what you're supporting. It's the same mentality. It's just the Western version of Eastern extremism and fanaticism that has been funded by the West. And it's exactly what they would do and have been doing in Ukraine against the Donbass people, against any nationality citizen in Ukraine that has protested against the persecution and ethnic cleansing in Donbass. So don't you dare ever anyone tell me, I'm anti-war. What are you going to stand still while your wife is torn apart? Or your baby, your unborn baby is torn from the womb and hung from a tree? You're going to sit there and go, yeah, but I'm against war, so I'm not going to do it. Fuck you. Sorry,
it's a privileged it's a privileged position,
already.
and it's a privileged position. But I want to stay here too as well, because I have some questions. And first off, no, we love it, and that's why I went you big, so you can get that.
It needed to be said.
And it still needs to be talked upon, because this is something I want to kind of elaborate on. Now, Fiorella, first, if you're going to attack the anarchists, please let me know. So, because now my phone's going to be ringing off the ringer today when you go.
If the shoe fits, all I was saying was, if you're going to hate all governments, that's the other thing, right, Pasta? All governments are bad. This is all part of the game. Russia's not really opposing.
Yeah, it's part of a cycle. Now the Chinese and this whole night. Well, this is what I want to ask too as well, because I think it's important, because this is something you said earlier in the year, Vanessa, that really stuck with me. And I said, at the end of the day, and I was trying to use these analogies. You know, if America and China were children, I would send America to its room and might even, put them up for adoption to get rid of them. But he wouldn't probably have a meal in a week. And I'd have a little talking with the Chinese, you know what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, it's about the ultimate aggressor, right? That's who we have to look at. There's action and there's reaction. And so much is a reaction to what the West is doing. And we understand, like, I've never advocated for communism, but I've advocated for the acceptance of communism. The libertarian who was on my show the other day, she was saying she can't understand how people here at home can have such a bad name for communism and be upset that another country has communism. She said it's like being upset at your neighbor for being gay. It just makes no sense. What is the ultimate responsibility of the United States as a citizen? Because right now we see this amped up kind of aggression towards China that is really scaring the shit out of me. It's almost like a picture's playing over in my head again of what we saw in Iraq, and they justified it and they manufactured consent. I think it was 90% of the people were okay in the United States with us going into Iraq because they looked it upon as these are the same people that went into the World Trade Center. No, read a fucking book. Know the difference between, Saddam Hussein and, what is the ultimate responsibility when we have these conversations with people pointing the finger? China this, China that, China this, China that. I mean, I always say we should be cleaning our own house first. Our only responsibility is to curtail our actions first. Ladies, what are your thoughts on the responsibilities of what an American citizen should say about their government before they start pointing the finger at China?
I think Eva should
Or
answer
Russia,
first,
or
'cause
anybody.
you've got to go.
Guys, I actually need to go. I'm sorry. I have an early morning tomorrow, and I just realized what time it is, so I'm gonna have to duck
Yes.
out. But Vanessa, I really appreciated what you said, and if I can just tag on, I'm sorry, Pasta, to go back to the previous comment, but
Please do. Please
you
do.
know, the whole notion of like being anti-war and like, oh, we should just be peaceful. In back to Palestine, you have the village of Beeley, for one example, that has been protesting nonviolently since 2005 or six, and they're met with Israeli high velocity tear gas canisters, rubber coated bullets, which are basically just metal balls that are covered in a plastic sheath that are cut in order so that on impact they will create more damage on the body, and live ammunition. In Gaza, protesters were met with. They weren't even met with tear gas. They were met with live ammunition. So this whole notion of like, we just need to sit and hold hands and sing Christmas songs. I actually had one guy say to me, I think Palestinians should just sing Christmas carols to the Israelis.
Yeah.
I'm like, do you have any idea? Like, they actually have dressed up in Santa Claus costumes, and they've done everything possible to do nonviolent protests, and they're met with extreme violence. So just back to your question about like, on that note, like, it's just, I think Vanessa said it very well. I think that people in the West just have no idea the degree to which people are suffering from these policies, these genocidal policies. And I think we've all actually seen it in Latin America and in the Middle East. And it is really infuriating to see people sitting comfortably at home, telling people in countries that are being oppressed how they should behave under oppression, under genocide. But yeah, I'm sorry to duck out. I've got to go.
No, thank
tomorrow
you
morning.
so much for your
Have a
time.
good day tomorrow.
We appreciate it.
Eva,
Get
next
some
Oh,
rest.
Happy
time-
New Year.
put a hyphen between the yay and the va. So because somebody said she's hitting her yay with the yeva, so you'll be yeva. So you'll hit your yay on.
Oh my gosh.
God.
No, she doesn't need to be yay. She's Yeva.
She hit yeva.
Yeva.
Yeah.
It's Russian.
Yeva.
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 We love you. Thank you so much for the hard
Good
work.
night.
Guys,
Happy New Year.
love you all.
Love you.
Yes. Much love.
Do you think that Vanessa, that you can jump into that?
It's
Yeva.
okay. I'm laughing because do you know how many times, like, if I post something on Facebook, how many times people start talking to me like I'm Eva, and I'm like, I'm 6 foot tall and blonde. She's shorter than me and much skinnier than me and dark. I have no idea how you guys managed to completely morph us into one thing. Every single time. It's hilarious. It's been going on for ages.
Because the work you ladies do, you ladies stand alone, and everybody knows that. Anybody who knows about you knows how you're friends and some of the work you've done together. But See in the Sky put down, ask them what does China or Russia have ever done to you personally. I'm having a hard time with this because a lot of people will start saying, what will they call me, a panda bear or somebody who's like a China sympathist? And it's like, listen, I've even acknowledged, I think you did some reporting or you've talked about this before. The Chinese have sold drones to the UAE, right? That have killed Yemenis. I think we've talked about this. I'm not saying that China's an angel, but like apples and oranges here. Like, what have they ever done to us? And is it in our actions? I mean, I remember in the 60s and 70s, if you look at a map, what the American Empire did to that region when it came to Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, that's on their doorstep. And they got thousands of bases out there, hundreds of bases around China. So what is your answer when people start pointing the finger like, the Bannons, China is our mortal enemy, and Jack Posobiec, we need to take them down. And then people are like, oh, you don't understand, China's bad. I'm like, hello? What about looking in the mirror first?
It's like every time there's a new conflict, it's almost like Groundhog Day. You have to start all over again. And it's just like, Jesus, does history did really, like what happened in Iraq, what happened in Libya? Oh yeah, but that's just whataboutism. No, that's context.
It's history.
That's history. That's showing a correlation between what's going on, right? And from my perspective, of course, I'm going to call out China, or I'm going to investigate why they're looting oil from Yemen, why the Yemenis are threatening to target Chinese ships that are docking and basically buying Yemeni oil below market price from the Saudis, right? Of course, I'm going to investigate that. But on the flip side, I'm also going to sort of call out the West and the Nazi complex that is, and I've done multiple reports on this, people can go and find it and listen to it and hear all about it, at the Nazi complex that was imported post-Second World War to basically demonize communism, right? Mm-hmm. Victims of communism was set up by Nazis, guys, by Zbigniew Brzezinski and Dobryansky. Dobryansky is a Ukrainian Nazi, right? So, hello, this was established post-Second World War to counter the Russian threat. Nazis and Zionists work together, guys, since the 1920s when Simon Petlura collaborated with Jabotinsky, who's the founder of the revisionist Zionist movement, right, in the 1920s. Petlura carried out multiple pogroms against Jews and communists in Ukraine and collaborated then with Jabotinsky. Guess what, guys? Netanyahu is a follower of Jabotinsky. He's a revisionist Zionist. What happened a couple of days ago? A former Azov battalion fighter released from Mariupol arrived in Israel. Like, all you guys that were kind of yelling at us, but Zelensky's a Jew. Like, how on earth would he support Nazis? Please look at history. It's all in history. And if your country is going to bomb the shit out of another country, you at least have the responsibility to understand why and not just kind of be spoon-fed an opinion by the media, which is affiliated to the military-industrial complex anyway, that is going to profit out of the bombing of whatever country that you're now hating because you're being told to hate it. Does nobody remember when you were under lockdown for COVID and suddenly the media went, oh no, you've all got to go out and give the knee for Floyd? Huh? Well, what happened to COVID lockdown? Right? You're being manipulated. You're being gaslighted, and you've seriously, if you can't get to that country to understand the culture, then at least speak to people that are either living in the country are from that country and have a different point of view to yours. Otherwise, honestly, this world is screwed, and America, which is a dying empire, is going to destroy as much as it can before it just completely disintegrates, hopefully.
I'm sorry, I'm shaking my head from some shit I see in the chat too, as well, where people are still blaming the Chinese Communist Party once again. Carrie Lake, she put up a tweet yesterday. I'm very tired and I want to quit and I want to sometimes give up. But what am I supposed to say to the children? I had a good life. Enjoy your communism. And I just put the head and the shaking down. I don't know about you, but I think this anti-communist movement is more of a tool to be divisive.
It's ridiculous. Russia is not communist. China is really, in its trade and economic relations, is nowhere near communist. So I don't understand. Like, are people still harking back to the Reds under the beds shit?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. They're reigniting it inside Brazil. You have the Bannonites telling people that China is behind the election being stolen. And first of all, the election wasn't stolen. And secondly, it's never been communist. They're saying Lula's a communist. I'm like, wait a second. So when Bolsonaro took the country over, it was communist? No. I said, well, Lula was the president for 8 years before. Now this time around, he's a communist. The other two, okay. But this is what we're dealing with here.
But this has been the situation for a long time, right? It was always the specter of communism was why the United States needed to go after the Soviet Union. But now that the specter of communism is gone, that the Soviet Union fell, now it's just about, okay, well, no, Putin is bad and Russians are bad. And what I find hilarious is you have a lot of conservatives that in the United States that are supportive of Russia, right? And are supportive of Vladimir Putin because Vladimir Putin isn't a communist. So they're like, he's got some conservative values, like socially, it's great. And then but they don't realize Russia and China are allies by necessity too. Obviously, they're also being interfered with. They've been sanctioned. They've been attempted to. Their governments have been just completely attacked by the West, and they're continuing to be attacked, like China via Taiwan, and obviously with Ukraine, Russia. But it's just funny because these two are allies, and then you have like the American right wanting to go to war with China. I'm like, do you not understand? Like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, the specter of communism isn't working as well, I think. So they're trying to ramp it up again because it's not like, because Russia isn't communist. As Vanessa said, China is definitely works in a capitalist element in many ways. Obviously, its government is still structured in that way, but you could say the same thing about Russia. Russia has not to the same degree, but Russia has Soviet elements in its bureaucratic existence, like I've always been mentioning. But it's it's not about communism. This is about something else. This is about them using communism to try to push in fascism, and that is actually, I think, the scary part is this fascism is going to come from one way or another. It's coming either from the liberal end or the conservative end. But either way, they're trying to circle us all into
and
fascism.
Look what they're saying down below. Lula is a WEF follower. So is Bolsonaro. And yes, he is a communist. I know, I'm from SA. If you don't know what you're talking about, because Lula's not a communist.
So am I.
But also, I also want to make another point here. Like, all this kind of, but he's WEF, he's Davos, he's this, they're all in it together, it's all one big cartel, and the oligarchs are taking over the world, and let's just all blow ourselves up right now because there's no hope. Like, seriously? And this theory was written up 20 years ago about the gap and the core, and it's computer modeling, guys. It's computer modeling. We're still human beings. We still have the ability to change the computer model and to not accept it. When Alex Ferguson modeled the COVID project, you all went, oh shit, okay, we're all going to die, so we'll stay at home and lock down. Why did you do that? Why did you do it? You have agency and you have power to say, no, what's going to happen? The sky isn't going to fall on your head, right? Just don't answer the text. Don't reply, etc. This is what I just don't understand. Is people are just allowing themselves to be so programmed. Like, yeah, let's worship Elon Musk because he's made a change at Twitter. He's going to implant things in your brain. He's going to monopolize social media. He's going to take over what are now independent media platforms and are providing you with alternative investigative journalism. He's going to monopolize
Vanessa, he's a good listen, give him a chance. He's a good oligarch. Look, he's like, you got Snowden, Assange, and Elon Musk.
Fam, don't start shit, man. You're going to get me more phone calls already. I don't want to hear this stuff.
I don't give a crap about the phone calls.
I'm going to get them because you don't got to take them. I got to take them. I know that was a ridiculous comment. I'm sorry.
But the point that I wanted to come back to is again, anyone can go through documents, and there are really good researchers out there, and they're doing very good work. But what they don't have is that kind of extra dimension of actually understanding the culture they're talking about and actually being in touch with the people that are in charge in the culture they're talking about. I mean, I'll give you one very good example. In Canada, and I've just written a stupidly long article about this, is the MAID, the Medical Assistance in Dying program, which is effectively a Nazi eugenicist program, right? It's killing people that they don't want. It's killing the homeless, it's killing the poor, it's killing the disabled. It's even talking about enabling MAID for babies up to 1 year. That it's allowing teenagers to make a decision when they feel a bit depressed one morning with the blues, they can sign up for MAID. It's eugenicism, right? When I actually asked contacts in the Russian government, have you legalized euthanasia? No, it's actually forbidden under, I can't remember which federal law it is, which number, but it's forbidden in Russia. What is Russia doing right now? I'm on a number of groups that are working towards economic revival post-sanctions, right? And trade and so on, and providing affordable housing for civilians, enabling civilians to invest in their own homes, invest in their own land, and so on and so forth. We're seeing the complete opposite to what is happening in the West, where all societal structures are being broken down, from family through religion to national health to education. Whereas in reality, in the East, what I'm seeing is it being built up. So, okay, so-and-so might have gone to a WEF meeting. So-and-so might have shook hands with Kissinger. So-and-so might have said hi to Schwab. But look at what is actually happening in the country.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I was just going to say, I think that the WEF situation and people just putting a picture of Lula and whoever, and like, just, it doesn't matter. It could be Putin and somebody, they do it with Putin too. It's very lazy analysis. You're just using a picture. There's multiple pictures of multiple people with people they don't like that happens all the time. It's part of being a politician, part of being a diplomat. It's part of being in any industry that's related to politics.
World leader.
You have that. It happens all the time. But like, it's just very lazy. And you know what, Vanessa? It happened because, do you remember when nobody was talking about the Great Reset? Nobody was talking about the web, and you were one of the few people, and we were talking about it in some aspect as well. Whitney was talking about it. And then people were saying it was a conspiracy smoothie, that it was fake, that it was just a bunch of bullshit. And then all of a sudden, Joe Rogan or somebody comes out and is like, oh yeah, like, these globalists. Yeah. And then it becomes popular jargon. And then these people just take that popular jargon, they run with it, they make it their own little whatever theory, and then they go and they're like, oh yes, these globalists, blah, 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 to sound smart, to sound like they know what they're talking about, but they don't know what they're fucking talking about. And it really irritates the shit out of me. Oh, these globalists, and they're all part with Soros. It's like, you just say the same 5 key words, and then some moron hears it and repeats it. And then it just becomes part of like, oh yes, this guy, he knows what he's talking about. I watch him. What the hell are you talking
Yeah.
about?
Well, fam.
This is not based in reality here.
Yeah, well, I think that our good friend, who also said that George Soros owns Lula, is good friends with this person, Maria here. And I love this right here because this is such, I don't know where you get this from, Maria. And don't get me wrong, I love that name. It's a great Italian name. I've been in love with many Marias my whole life, but this is just Shangad. Liberal leftists are ruining the world. That's why Biden got installed, to pull off the agenda and, yes, take America down. As long he's in, yes. Oh my God, Elon is trying to stop the globalist agenda.
DARPA boys trying to stop the globalist agenda. Sure.
Yeah. I mean,
let's get to Vanessa's tweet here. She says, "Dear all of you, would you like to read it, please?" And I'll show the picture after you read it, Vanessa.
Oh. Dear all of you, but he's a good oligarch, pundits. Look what you're celebrating, the total monopoly of alternative media platforms by someone who is not your friend. Please let 2023 be the year we cut the umbilical cord attaching us to savior fetishism. And this is an article actually by, who is it? Majid,
yeah. Majid
Nawaz.
Majid
Nawaz. It's a good, I mean, he just really collates a load of tweets and stuff that Elon Musk himself has said. And the fact that he's now eyeing up Substack, which has actually been, and it's certainly become probably the biggest independent media platform and the go-to for most people that are looking for alternative information, right? So surprise, surprise, he's targeting that next. And, this is it. It's complete monopoly. And I'm sorry, the Twitter files, okay, it's kind of crossing the T's and dotting the I's over what some of us, myself included, reported back in 2017.
Yeah.
That Twitter is a CIA surveillance agency. That's in black and white. It's nothing new. Okay, now maybe you're getting a little bit more detail, but when these guys release something, it's a smoke screen. It's covering something way bigger. You know what I mean? It's the tip of the iceberg that they're letting you see, so that you go, oh, this guy's.
This is why I love this woman.
The globalist agenda. Wrong. He's an oligarch. He's one of the richest men in the world. How the hell did he get to that position? He didn't get there by doing the.
He worked really hard. Okay.
Defense contracts. He's subsidized by the U.S. fucking military.
And I'm sorry, he wants to put implants in your brain. Well, okay, if you want to go down the route, if he's fighting the globalist agenda, that's fine. If people really need this kind of, it is a savior fetishism. Whether it's Hollywood cultism or whether it's but he's done something good, so he's a good billionaire. I mean, someone actually replied to me on that. Well, there's good witches and bad witches. I'm like, you're writing a fairy tale. Like, what is wrong with you?
There's a wicked witch of the east, a wicked witch of the west.
Yeah.
Well, I think that kind of, we should wrap this up, Vanessa. It's getting really late here and stuff, but that's the importance of it. So we don't live in a fairy tale. And I think this is how you've been so inspirational to us and with the work we've done. You get up off your ass and you go there and you see what's happening in the real world, not in your own bubble, where you have witches, warlocks, good witches, Glenda. I don't even know what the other one's name is. But that's why we have to do the things we do and get there. Vanessa, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you? Fam, do you have anything else for Vanessa before we let her go to
I think Vanessa, I have to clip up the Vanessa rant because that was a great one.
Oh, no.
So yes. Ending the year with a Vanessa rant is so great. And, I loved Eva's rant too, because I'm just so sick and tired of that narrative. I'm sick and tired of this narrative too. Just like the whole, you said it's fetishism, right? Of the savior. This is very prominent in the Western world, like in the United States and Europe, in the UK. I mean, it's clearly, especially in the United States, we grew up with Marvel superheroes. Oh my God, the benevolent billionaire is going to save us all, and it's really sad to see. And you know what, Vanessa? I know you say you hope that we can cut the umbilical cord in 2023. I don't think we're going to.
No, I know.
We had on Tom Luongo this morning, he gave a great
Nice.
analogy of why he thinks that what Elon's doing is well, but um, we still butted heads on a lot of things too as well. I was trying to bring up some. It was very interesting. I think Fiorella said before that she's happy that they were released, but let's understand
Yeah.
what is actually being released. We're not trying to just be negative about everything, like dark days, but these are selective screenshots, and he didn't release the algorithm. He didn't release what is really going on, what we have to show. I mean, he didn't
Well,
release
he's also,
anything.
it's not changing either.
Yeah,
Like, I
no,
mean, the
exactly.
accounts are still
It's increasing. The
selectively
censorship
shadow
is
banned.
the censorship is increasing, actually.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
the red meat. And I asked him. I said, "Well, why did he release Dan Bongino and Charlie Kirk? What happened? What was the decision made to selectively show these two guys as being censored, and not everybody?"
Yeah.
It's hard to answer that question.
Yeah.
Well, Vanessa, I hope you have a wonderful New Year's Eve tomorrow, and and that it's beautiful, and we'll see you again. I mean, we always have fun chatting with you. It was great having Eva too.
No, it
I
was
know
really
we're being
nice.
Yeah, you've been so inspirational. And later on today or tomorrow,
course.
I'm going to release my 2022 honorable mention and most influential person of the year. You were nominated because I was doing the nominating. So, because it's my world. So stay
And your
tuned,
mom.
Eva.
Say
Yeah,
hi to your
Vanessa.
mom.
I will. I mean, listen, I thank you for reminding me, because this is what's important, because it's very hard. We know a lot of people. We've met a lot of people, especially from the anti-imperialist left. And we've also met a lot of people who still can't get across to the other side. I've had you on the show several times. My mom is a Trumper, but she listens to you. She does. She listens to you, and I think that's a gift when you could talk to people on all sides of the spectrum and explain to them what's going on. That's what's important, and I think you do that better than most, if not better than all, and I can't appreciate that enough. Thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you.
We love you.
And,
We love you, Vanessa.
Yeah, have a great new year. And next year, just so that people know, I'm actually heading to Iran to do a 2-week documentary there about all the bullshit that's coming out of the West about Iran. So that will be kind of interesting. And by the way, I don't have any editorial censorship over what I want to see, over what I want to do, over who I want to talk to. So I think you'll find that's a big difference. If you go to Canada, for example, and you want to talk to the freedom truckers, then you're not going to be allowed to, right? So we all need to kind of figure out where the censorship is coming from. It's not coming from the East.
I'm gonna do my best. I'm gonna do my best Netanyahu impression. Well, Iran is still a very big terrorist organization, and we need to take Iran off the face of the earth because they are. That's Netanyahu. They're still pointing.
We don't need to hear that guy.
Yeah. We love you, Vanessa.
Love you guys. Happy New Year.
Say hi to the
Happy
doggies.
I will.
Yes.
They're all asleep at the moment, but I will.
Aww, they're so cute. Bye, Vanessa.
Bye, guys.
Vanessa Beeley, ladies and gentlemen. In your faces. Up your noses with the rubber hoses. Do you want to do this thing here? We've been going for almost 2 hours. We can not do it if you're really, really tired, or we can, because this is going to be a little bit of a while. We can park it and do it on Monday. Because I've been
probably.
I hear you.
Yeah, even you look tired. You look like you had a long night or something. I don't know what you were doing.
I didn't. I've been resting. I've been sick for the last couple of days. I got a cold on Christmas, so I took my ivermectin just in case, and my vitamin C, my vitamin D, zinc, and all that other good stuff. So I've been pushing it. But today's like the first day I felt halfway decent, so I still have to kind of like Well,
I would say you look halfway decent, not like full weight. It's like halfway decent. I mean, I'm used to seeing the Russian men
I will get on a plane right now, fam, and come straight shit out.
Yeah, you need a visa, first of all. You're not allowed in here just like that.
I'm wearing my Eco House shirt here. Have some respect.
That is not a Nico House shirt.
This
That
is
it's
totally
way
my
too.
Nico House shirt. Look at it. It's got the
No,
paisley
it's
print.
not bright enough. It's got to be brighter than that. It's got to be like bright yellow or bright orange. You know,
Those
it
are
was
the
Nico's
shoes,
birthday the
fam.
other day.
I
It
have
was
not
Nico's
been playing
birthday the other
pickleball,
day.
DC. And so was it Johnny's birthday, too, as well.
Yeah,
Johnny,
well, we
Nico,
said
and
happy
Zach.
birthday to Johnny. Yeah, it's freaking Capricorns, man. It's my dad's birthday soon, and then it's my
Ugh.
mother's birthday. They're all Capricorns. I'm in a world of Capricorns. They annoy the shit out of me. What am I supposed to do with them?
Nothing. Well, you're not like that great, too, as well, because you're like a Pisces, and that's a pain in the ass. Everybody knows that Pisces are just like the most annoying.
They're one of the most signs it found in serial killers.
Of course they are. That explains everything. Rumble Rants, Costello 1. Keep up the great work, ladies. Pasta 2. Smiles. That's great Rumble Rants over there. My friend Vicky Lynn is hanging on out with all my other peeps over there on Rumble, guys. We've been growing that channel, getting those numbers up. We want you to continue to do that. Over on the Rockfin. Oh, look at this. We got some Ray tokens coming in. Black in the Empire. Love y'all.
What's up, Daryl?
Daryl. Have a great new year. Keep up the great work. Daryl, if you want, Daryl, you always have a spot here on the Combo Couch to come on.
Yeah, Daryl.
Whenever you want, we reserve that right for you.
Wait.
Eva,
Daryl is a Russian asset. He is literally called a Russian like every day. He's called a Russian almost as much as I am. Like it's like so Daryl, you want to come on be a real Russian asset?
Oh.
Come on the couch.
Combo Couch rocks. This is for May Rem. Thank you so much. Always in good
Hey,
company. Thank you so much. Happy New Year. Salute, Rem. And, I know I speak a lot about Vicky Lynn, but Mariah Myers, my first love, Peaches that she sends us. Much love, Combo Couch.
Around.
Fee, Pasta, and Vanessa. Great collaboration. Happy New Year. Also, Eva Bartlett was on there today, guys. It was a great show. Guys, if you could sign up for Rockfin, please do. It's $14.99. We're going to be hopefully coming into the new year, being able to have our own personal subscriptions where we'll be able to set a certain price and you will be able to subscribe to the Combo Couch only. That's supposed to be coming. We will check back on Rockfin. Fred Edward, thank you so much for all the great work you do. Watching things over on those Rumble Rants. I love you guys, fam. It's been a great new year.
Thank you much.
What else you got to say?
Yeah, it's been a great. It's just been it's been a great year in spite of it all. I mean, it's been a terrible year for the world, but it's been a great year of growth for me. And I really can't say I've been unhappy too much this year. I think overall it's been a good year. So I kind of get freaked out when that happens, when there's too much like jolliness or happiness, I feel like there's something wrong. So it's like the Wednesday Addams in me that is like, shit, like there's got to be like darkness lurking, or we can't allow, our heart to unfreeze or something. Like there's got to be something,
Yeah. Well, listen, on Monday, I'm going to get with Fee and we're going to try to start releasing listen, I got something to say about what I got. Darren Levy down there made a comment. So listen, we're going to put up our fundraiser very soon for Cuba. We have to start putting that together. That is in March. What I'm trying to do is if we have enough funds, maybe go from Cuba to Moscow, hang out in Moscow for a couple weeks. I'll get those Russian clothes and get a picture from Russia with love if y'all put us in a position to do so. So we'll be getting that going sooner than later. We have a lot of things planned for the year ahead. We definitely have Cuba and Argentina on the Argentina is going to be crazy, right? We talked about for a year, Bolsonaro versus Lula. We're going to go check this out. Bolsonaro, we did it. You guys put us in a position to do that. I agree, Tim MC. I need a Russian hat. But we'll see what we can do, guys. But I can't thank you enough for an amazing year. All that stuff. It's amazing. Thank you guys so much.
We love you guys. And Pasta needs to really take it up a few notches if he's going to come to Russia. I mean, he's got to dress well. He's got to, grow some, some hair in his chest. Like, you got the beard down, but like, I don't know. We're missing something. I don't know. Maybe, it's the Italian in you. It's the Italian. Like, I don't know how we can't get rid of it. So
you've been so, you've been so abusive,
Me?
Yeah, to me.
No.
Pasta siempre. The Italian in me? You're gonna
Yes,
talk about?
that's DC. That's what you reminded me. So today was the anniversary of the Battle of Santa Clara uh, in Cuba, and Pasta hates it when I play the song. But it was the Hasta Siempre song. I play it all the time. But Pasta hates it. But yeah, it was the definitive battle that pretty much caused Batista to flee the country. And I forgot to put in a link where I talk about the history of everything about Cuba. Actually, I did a really extensive video on that. I will get that link out and share it on my Twitter because it's meant to be shared. But hasta siempre, Pasta.
Is the
I'm not gonna
Hasta
call you
siempre?
comandante because
Is
I'm
that the?
comandante.
Is that the?
That's a song.
Hold on. I know it is, fam. You played it like crazy because you won. I don't care that you play it. I don't dislike it. It's when you play it 9 times over a row, then it gets a little annoying, fam. That's you and Dennis being stuck in a car going from the border, going from Mexico up to like South California for like 2.5 hours, and letting you guys take over the radio was just like, oh my god, how did I do this to myself? Let's end the show this way, fam. Thank you so much for a great year, guys. The Combo Couch will be rocking it in the future. We're going to have a great 2023. I can't thank you guys enough. I am so humbled to all of you over here. I know I always scream out Vicky Lynn and Mariah Myers and DC, but I love all you guys. Trey, I love you guys all.
We love you, Trey.
Lucky Burrito, Jilly Love.
Lucky. Friendly Brilliant.
Who, Ruth from the
Darren
Gazette.
Levy.
We love you. Darren Levy, Becky. There's everybody
Shout
out
out
there.
to Rocky Bellinger, who's always been
left
Sam.
love on the let me look at it really quick. Somebody left some love yesterday, fam, on the Convo Couch Give Send Go. I forgot it. I didn't mention it.
So Rocky was sick. He got COVID, and also it was very, very cold in Michigan, as you guys know, because of the blizzard. So it's actually warm in Russia right now. It's snowed all day. It's 35 degrees Fahrenheit. It's warm. That's warm for Russia. This is great.
Mr. Fish left a love on the Give Send Go.
Mr.
Guys, if you want to go to the
Fish.
Give Send Go, the Combo Couch Brazil, we still have that up over there. Like I said, we're going to get another Give Send Go going for Cuba and whatnot. But thank you all for such a beautiful year. Thank you to my partner, Fiorella, who's always been an inspiration. I have been lucky as can be to find you and to work with you for doing this for over 5 years. And I look to do it until the day I die, like Larry King, to get to go out doing work like this. It truly is a blessing. And I can't thank all of you out there enough for putting us in a position, my mother included too, who's helped out me financially over the years to keep this going as well. So thank you very much to everybody. Fam, we'll end the show with your song.
Yeah.
Here it is. Combo out, everybody. You say it. It's your line.
Where's my hat?
Say combo out.
Okay. Fam, you're not the director here. Combo out, guys. Bye. Give him that today. Happy New Year.
Aprendimos a quererte desde la histórica altura donde el sol de tu bravura le puso cerco a la muerte.
Aquí se queda la clara, la entrañable transparencia de tu querida presencia, comandante Che Guevara.
Tu mano gloriosa y fuerte sobre la historia dispara cuando todo Santa Clara se despierta para verte.
Aquí se queda la clara, la entrañable transparencia de tu querida presencia, comandante Che Guevara.
Vienes quemando la brisa con soles de primavera para plantar la bandera con la luz de tu sonrisa.
Aquí se queda la clara, la entrañable transparencia de tu querida presencia, comandante Che Guevara.
Tu amor revolucionario te conduce a nueva empresa donde esperan la firmeza de tu brazo libertario.
Aquí se queda la clara, la entrañable transparencia de tu querida presencia, comandante Che Guevara.
Seguiremos adelante, como junto a ti seguimos, y con Fidel te decimos, hasta siempre, comandante.
Aquí se queda la clara, la entrañable transparencia de tu querida presencia, comandante Che Guevara.